Welcome back, everybody, as well as the newcomers. I'm Stu Ehrlich and I have Alzheimer's. I hope you all have been enjoying my posts. And as I've been saying in them, having Alzheimer's is not an easy illness to have. And I hope you understand what I've been saying from the beginning in all my posts. Being able to talk about Alzheimer's to everybody, the more you do, the better you'll feel. What I want to talk to you about today is what happened before and after my diagnosis, realizing my symptoms and sharing them with my caregiver, who is my wife, Harriet. But before I talk to you, I want to start and remind you about what I'm going to talk about next week. And it's another very important subject, which is how we found a financial manager, an elder care attorney, someone you should all have. Actually, it's two people that you should have. And if you have them, listen in, because it's very important to see what we have done, and maybe you might want to share what you have done as well. Remember, if you have any questions or suggestions, something you want me to talk about, please send me comments or an email, and you can reach me at stewart041945@gmail.com. And I know you're out there listening to me, and I know you have to have some questions. And I know you do. And if I don't have the answers, I have resources that will get them for you. So please don't hesitate. After this show, please sit down and send them to me. I knew I wasn't right long before I was diagnosed. Since I was diagnosed 11 years ago, as well as a couple years before that, I was feeling things that were just not right. And this is something everybody out there who does have early onset or a form of Alzheimer's or dementia, as well as caregivers. If you listen carefully, you'll see somebody shaking their head yes. On my regular visit to my therapist, this is one thing that I did. I asked him to help me figure out how to remember things I was no longer able to remember. Everybody's going to have this problem. We started with my long-term memory. He gave me ideas and suggestions, and we worked on them. So one of the things that happened is when I was growing up, I had a kid that lived next door to me. He was my age, but for the life of me, I could not remember his name. Sound familiar to anybody? Aunt, uncle, cousin, next door neighbor, girlfriend, boyfriend from way back. It happens. My therapist worked with me and I finally remembered it. I then started remembering other things about him, and it just came out. It was so unbelievable. And my first friend, who I've known my entire life, talks to me constantly about our childhood through high school. And we laugh now because I'm starting to remember more things than he does. And now he's worrying. But I kid him around, tell him it's a senior moment. I've since learned that a symptom of Alzheimer's is mostly short-term memory. I also was getting mixed up when I had to go somewhere. Go somewhere where I was familiar with. I started driving and I realized I didn't know where I was going. I got scared, I got confused. I remember once I even called my wife because I didn't know where I was and I was crying. I just didn't know what to do. Other things that were happening to me were things like I was starting projects I couldn't complete. I was beginning to have difficulty concentrating on single tasks. Everything that was happening over the years was just getting me downright depressed. It just wasn't like me. That's not how I was. So this is when I decided to see a neurologist. I actually saw 3. None of them said there was anything wrong with me. And they just wouldn't listen to me. It got me really frustrated and angry. But I wasn't going to give up. So I tried one more time. I found a local neurologist in my own town. As I've said before, she listened to me. We talked a lot. She examined me, and then we talked some more. At that first visit, based on my answers to her questions and telling her what I was experiencing, she determined a PET scan would be the specific test I needed to get more detailed image of my brain, to see actually what was going on inside of me. So folks, I wasn't crazy. Something was really going on. And by the way, from day one, I made it a practice to have my wife join me in all my doctor's appointments. Please don't go alone, because when you leave, you will forget. I don't care how good you think your memory is, it doesn't work. The most important little things will be forgotten. My next meeting with my doctor, the results answered my concerns that something was wrong. The diagnosis was suspicious of Alzheimer's. It was a lot to take in. I was happy I found out what was wrong, but on the other hand, I was scared. I didn't know how to react. We sat and talked about Alzheimer's, but everything she said just went in one ear and out the other. Sound familiar? Thank goodness my wife was with me, because we were able to go home and she explained everything to me one more time. And one thing about going to a doctor, my doctor never threw me out of the office. She never said, time's up, you gotta go. I sat as long as I needed to sit and talk to her, and she talked to me. Very special. At that visit, she started me on medication and made another appointment 3 months later, and she said, unless you need me sooner, call. So on March 2009, I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. And let me remind you of 2 very important definitions. Early onset Alzheimer's means being diagnosed before the age of 65. And early stage Alzheimer's indicates someone in the beginning of the disease, when the person is beginning to have memory problems and is still able to function. No age limit. After settling in and realizing what I had to deal with, my Alzheimer's took me in 2 directions. The first, going back to living my life before the diagnosis, which I knew was impossible. And the other was finding something that my doctor couldn't help me with. People like myself to relate with and talk to. Getting back to normal. So what's normal now? I have to go back to my job. What do I say? What do I do? I have always been an open person, so it was no big deal for me to tell my boss and coworkers what was wrong. You know, I remember at that time, the fact that I had the beginning of a memory loss actually wasn't noticeable then, so I just dealt with it. The hardest part of all this was nobody. Family, friends, people I met, didn't believe that I had Alzheimer's. And I've been living with that till today. Okay? So, Alzheimer's has nothing to do with how you look. And that's a good response to give to those people that make those kind of comments. Don't start telling them they don't know. Let it go. I've been telling you some of my early symptoms I've experienced. So have you had any of these experiences? Or had any of the types of symptoms? This is when I need you to help me by contacting me with your list of symptoms. Posting to help anybody that has Alzheimer's is important. If we don't share, we can't help others. How did you get help? By listening to me, to your doctors, to others talk? Yes. Otherwise, where would you be? Did you know what to do when you were first diagnosed? Think about it, please. Now that I had a diagnosis, there were two things I needed to do. The first was to share with my wife, who is my caregiver, and we shared all the symptoms I've been having over the past couple of years prior to my Alzheimer's diagnosis, as well as things that were happening in the beginning of my diagnosis. Things I was dealing with and trying to figure out how I was going to handle this Alzheimer's problem. To me, it was a problem, okay? And the other was to find people to talk to who were experiencing what I was experiencing. Hard to do. And if you remember back 10 years or more, people weren't really talking much about Alzheimer's or even admitting they had it. Harry and I talked about my symptoms, and we realized most, if not all, of the issues I was having prior to being diagnosed were actually symptoms of Alzheimer's. But we weren't really sure how to handle them. So my doctor told me about a group that had meetings, but I found out later they were caregiver meetings. We made a call and we were told where and when these meetings were and the topics of the meetings. We started going to the meetings, which were helpful to Harriet, but not for me. Because what they talked about just didn't help me. It was for caregivers. Except when they had speakers, which I found very interesting. When I called to ask if they had anything for people with early onset, they said, sure. We go to museums, movies, and stuff like that. But no groups. No place to sit down and talk to people. I wanted to know what people were doing to help them. I didn't want to sit next to somebody and watch a movie. It took me 5 to 6 years before we actually started an early onset group in Southwest Florida, where I now live, and shortly after that, with the help of the Alzheimer's Association in Northern New Jersey, that's the chapter, we started a group in Northern New Jersey, which I still facilitate. There are lots of things you can do to make our lives easier. First thing you need to understand is, yes, Alzheimer's is a deadly disease. But that doesn't mean you have to sit around and wait to die. You don't. The thought of what it will be like at the end will always be in the back of your mind. You need to do as I do. Do something. Do something with your life now. Anything. Get out of bed, get off the couch, and with your caregiver's help, find a hobby that you liked, or something you did that and stopped because you felt you have Alzheimer's, you can't do anything anymore. Baloney. I'd say something else, but I can't. Go to the gym. Okay? Get your brain revived and get up again. I do. Something else to be aware of as your love, and this is for your caregiver. And you're going to listen because you're going to laugh, but it's going to happen. Don't give your loved ones options when they're further along. It can make them irritable. As an example, what would you like for breakfast, honey? No. Say to your loved one, I'm making an egg sandwich for breakfast. It'll be ready in 15 minutes. That's it. Sometimes you can't give us a choice because most of the time answers are really not what you want to hear. Just do it in a calm tone voice. There's a website, www.memorycafedirectory.com. Write that down, please. I'll say it one more time. www.memorycafedirectory.com. Please check it out. It will tell you all the memory cafes in the United States. And if you are in the northern New Jersey area, it's easy for you. Just email me and I'll invite you to our group. It's for people with Alzheimer's and their caregivers only. So if you're a relative, please contact me. We'll get you in. Everything we do and we talk about is confidential. As the years passed, of course, my symptoms started deteriorating. But thanks to my doctor, regular office visits, med changes when needed, with the help and of course me listening to my caregivers and the doctor and trusting them. So that's it for today, folks. But please subscribe and like me. I'm a nice guy. But more important, please share with others. Do it now. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and God bless.